We're going to start the plenary sessions now this morning, and our first speaker, I'm very delighted to introduce, of course, is Sara Oldfield, who probably doesn't need any introduction to any of you. Actually, I think of Sara and her husband Bruce every morning when I have breakfast in my flat in London, because I have one of Bruce's pictures on the wall opposite the dining table of the black irises from Jordan. So Sara is never far from my mind. So Sarah's going to talk about a new agenda for Botanic Gardens, which of course is close to all our hearts, and I'm quite sure there'll be a great deal of food for thought in her talk. Sara.
Thank you very much, Joan, and I'm delighted to know that you think about me every morning. Anyway, it's a great pleasure to give this first plenary lecture today, and it's entitled A New Agenda for Botanic Gardens, but I think really it should be a renewed agenda for Botanic Gardens, because we have strategies, we have plans, we have agendas. And really, I think it's about renewing our commitment and seeing how we can strengthen all our work. Botanic gardens around the world provide a really amazing resource for plant conservation, for education, for research. And the global strength of Botanic Gardens is really based around their long history, their well-established collections, between 80 and 100,000 living plant collections within Botanic Gardens, the huge numbers of visitors that they attract each year, and Botanic Gardens provide that interface between botanical science, horticulture, and the public. And as we all know, the Botanic Garden community is collaborative and networked, and I think that's so important to share our resources and act as a combined force for plant conservation and environmental education. And we're a respected voice in biodiversity conservation. I think the message from Braulio Diaz, the Secretary General of the Convention on Biological Diversity, this morning just recognised how Botanic Gardens are seen collectively in the world of international policy. And I think we are the best champions for plants, the importance of plants, plant diversity, and the conservation of plants. And BGCI is proud to serve a truly global network of botanic gardens. Really, and a growing network, but there are more botanic gardens being formed every year. And I know there are issues of sustainability and there are issues of funding, but we manage to keep going, and the botanic garden community is growing stronger. But there are huge global problems that we have to try and address. And as Joan has mentioned already this morning, I was looking at a consensus statement from the Millennium Alliance for Humanity and the Biosphere, which came out earlier this year in May, published by over 500 scientists and coordinated from Stanford University. And they put out this statement with essential points for policymakers and said that unless decisive countermeasures are put into place immediately, climate change, loss of ecological diversity, extinctions, environmental contamination, human population growth and overconsumption of resources will degrade our quality of life within a few decades. And that's really powerful stuff. And Botanic Gardens can't solve all the world's problems, but I think acting collectively, we can really address some of the key issues. The major challenges in biodiversity conservation are so well known to us all. Global population increase. The world population is currently 7 billion people, and it's estimated to be 9.5 billion by 2050. Rising expectations. Everyone wants more. And there are diminishing resources. I think water resources are going to be a really key issue. Climate change we all are aware of nowadays, but there is still a huge denial of the scale of the problems. So we know the main drivers of biodiversity loss and changes in ecosystem services: habitat transformation, climate change, invasive alien species, overexploitation of species and pollution. We are already, as the Botanic Garden community, tackling many of those issues in our own way, and we will be talking collectively about how we can do more this week. Climate change, I think, is a really serious concern that we all have to be so conscious of. The latest IPCC report that came out recently really emphasizing that the climate is warming. That is an accepted fact. Since the 1950s, many of the observed changes are unprecedented over decades to millennia, and the atmospheric concentrations of carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide have increased to levels unprecedented in at least the last 800,000 years. I mean, this is sort of accepted scientific fact now. So what can we do about it? Well, I think one of the things that we should be emphasizing in the Botanic Garden community and through our partnerships with other conservation agencies is that conserving plant diversity provides some of the solutions to the serious ecological problems that the world faces. We can restore habitats. We can use the plant material held in our living collections and the seeds in the seed banks to restore degraded habitats and thereby increase resilience, ecological resilience to the impact of climate change. We can provide sustainable solutions to improve livelihoods. We can work out how to sustainably harvest or sustainably produce the key resources that people are dependent on. But at the same time, I think it's important to consider, should we still make the case for conserving each and every threatened plant species? This is a species of rhododendron dendrocaris on Wushan in Sichuan. It's one of the globally threatened rhododendrons. In total, around a third of all rhododendron species are threatened in the wild. We've seen the magnificent displays here in New Zealand in cultivation, but in the wild, rhododendrons are in trouble. I mean, this delightful little species, should we be trying to conserve that? Should we be trying to conserve this Hebe chathamica from the Chatham Islands in New Zealand? Well, I think as well as trying to address the big global issues, we should try and maintain the emphasis on the conservation of threatened species. And this is a quote from 1998 that I still think is very relevant. The loss of even one species diminishes the Earth's store of biological diversity. For once eliminated, a species cannot be recovered or regenerated. All possibilities the species had for bettering life are gone, including its potential to provide the basis of life-saving medicines or new or improved foodstuffs to feed a burgeoning population. Species losses are also felt at the genetic, community and landscape levels. When a species is gone, so is its genetic heritage. So I do think that we have to try and conserve the full diversity of threatened species. And New Zealand is a country that is globally respected for its leadership in plant conservation. There's a strong government commitment to plant conservation, for example, through the Department of Nature Conservation. There is a strong commitment from the Botanic Garden community with around 20 botanic gardens. And the New Zealand Plant Conservation Network has the vision that no indigenous species of plant will become extinct nor be placed at risk of extinction as a result of human action or indifference, and that the rich, diverse and unique plant life of New Zealand will be recognised, cherished and restored. And the New Zealand Plant Conservation Network has a fabulous website with around 1 million visitors each year and some fantastic images. And I have to thank John Sawyer and John Barkler for very kindly letting me use some of their images of New Zealand threatened plants in this talk. For example, this is Brachyglottis huntii from the Chatham Islands, Galteria parvula from South Island, and Gentianella serina from the Enderby Islands. All beautiful plants that are worthy of conservation attention. Globally, we still don't know how many threatened plant species there are, so we still don't really know the size of the task that we face. The 1997 IUCN Red List provided 34,000 threatened plant species, globally threatened plant species, and at the time, Kerry Walter, who I think is here in the audience, and Harriet Gillett, the authors of that report, said that this was the tip of the iceberg. We don't know, but estimates are that around 100,000 plant species might be threatened with extinction. And we've got the strategy. So we've got the agenda, if you like, for our work in plant conservation. Governments worldwide generally agree that plant conservation is important. And they've committed to the Global Strategy for Plant Conservation. A lot of the delivery of that strategy is through the work of Botanic Gardens, as Braulio Diaz referred to in his message this morning. We're all very familiar with the scope of the Global Strategy for Plant Conservation. Collectively, it addresses many of the world's ecological problems. First of all, we need to continue to understand and document plant diversity. We need to conserve the diversity of plants, including all those beautiful little species that are endemic to the subantarctic islands of New Zealand, but all need to be a focus for conservation attention. Use plant diversity sustainably, that's still a huge global challenge. And we need to promote education and awareness about plant diversity, which is clearly a key role for the Botanic Garden community, and build capacity for plant diversity through the Botanic Garden networks and in partnership with other organisations. So we're familiar with the scope of the GSPC, and this has guided the work of BGCI. BGCI has worked in partnership with the CBD Secretariat since the outset of the global strategy, and with all the input from the Botanic Garden community helped to develop the global strategy, originally back in 2002. We have had particular emphasis and responsibility for Target 8 and Target 14 of the GSPC, which will be very familiar to you all. And BGCI continues to provide the Secretariat for the Global Partnership for Plant Conservation, which brings together the Botanic Garden community with all the other players in plant conservation at a global level. So currently, we have an MOU with the CBD Secretariat to provide an effective partnership on the implementation of the updated global strategy, which was developed and adopted back in 2010, and to maintain and enhance the toolkit for the global strategy, which is available online. And we really welcome any input from any Botanic Gardens to provide case studies or resources to support the toolkit. And our work contributes to the implementation of the strategic plan for biodiversity. And there will be a midterm review of the GSPC in 2014. And this really, I think, is an opportunity for Botanic Gardens to tell the world what they're doing in support of the Global Strategy for Plant Conservation and its targets. We'll be hearing more about this from Peter Wise-Jackson later during the week. But I think the midterm review really provides an opportunity for botanic gardens to communicate what they're doing. It's not always been recognised at a governmental level what the contribution is from botanic gardens. But this really is an opportunity to contribute information, case studies, reports and information. And the case studies on implementation of the GSPC that contribute to the midterm review will also be included as appropriate within the GSPC toolkit. So the GSPC provides our agenda for the work of botanic gardens around the world. And it's really been embraced by the botanic garden communities. All aspects of the GSPC are being supported to a certain degree by the botanic gardens. I think we're all very familiar with Target 8, which calls for at least 75% of globally threatened plant species to be in ex situ collections, preferably in the country of origin, and at least 20% available for recovery and restoration programs. Now, the second part of that target is a huge challenge. Overall, botanic gardens are doing well at recording and sharing information on the threatened species that they have in their ex situ collections. But the restoration challenge is significantly more difficult. So back in 2010, we reported on the progress towards meeting Target 8 by botanic gardens around the world. We estimated then that approximately a third of all known globally threatened plant species were in ex situ collections. But that was based on the information available, and I think we still have work to do to really build on that information base and identify the gaps in ex situ collections and prioritise where we might move forward. BGCI's plant search database, I'm sure you are all familiar with this. It provides a general framework for sharing information. There's more that we could do to improve the database. It's one of the talking points for us to consider this week. How can we more effectively share the information? What information should we make more widely available? But it is really a fantastic resource, and thank you to all the botanic gardens that contribute data to the BGCI plant search database. We can use that to undertake surveys of particularly interesting or selected groups of plant species that are known to be in trouble in the wild. We've tended to focus on trees over the recent years at BGCI for our ex situ surveys, but we can look at other groups as well. Our latest survey is a global assessment of the ex situ collections of conifer species, and I'm really delighted that over 600 botanic gardens have contributed data to this survey, and as a result of that we could see that 83% of globally threatened conifer taxa are in ex situ collections, but 49 globally threatened taxa are not yet in ex situ collections. So that's a clear gap that I think we could work to address. So Target 8 of the GSPC remains fundamental to the work of the botanic garden community. And looking ahead, I think we need to encourage all gardens to share their information to the extent that they are able and willing to do so. We need to ensure that major seed bank collections are included. We work closely with the Millennium Partnership Seed Bank at Kew, and we've worked with the ENSCANet, which was a European project. We need to also ensure that we find some mechanism to record the progress towards recovery and restoration, the use of the living plant collections and seeds bank accessions in restoration and recovery work. And we really need to work to improve the quality of the collections, particularly if they're going to be used for restoration, so that we build genetically representative collections. So overall, on Target 8 of the GSPC, we can measure its implementation using our global databases. And there is good progress. It's an easy target to measure, and I think we are making really significant progress. The outcomes of the target are seed banks, living collections, good documentation. I think we need to do more to encourage seed banks within botanic gardens at appropriate levels to really make the most of that very cost-effective way to conserve plant diversity. And this is something that we will be talking about this week. But the long-term conservation effect has to be using that material for effective restoration. So I think overall we are making good progress with Target 8 of the GSPC as part of our renewed agenda for botanic gardens. The other target that we're all so very familiar with, Target 14, the importance of plant diversity and the need for its conservation to be incorporated into communication, education, and public awareness programs. Again, the work of botanic gardens is so critical in delivering this target, and I think it's something that we can really focus on how we can improve our collective work to get common messages about the importance of plants and why we must conserve plant diversity at a global level, and how people can get involved, because people may well feel overwhelmed by the scale of the threats and want to know how they can be involved. Ultimately, for this target, it's quite difficult to measure implementation, but it is when we've carried out surveys at botanic gardens to find out what their role, what their work is in relation to the GSPC, this is the target that is most frequently implemented by botanic gardens. And the outcomes should lead to increased awareness of plant diversity, its importance and conservation need. But the long-term effect must be to try and influence behaviour, to try and make a change so that plant diversity is effectively conserved worldwide. So I've just picked on several of the targets of the GSPC. We will have plenty of opportunity this week to talk more about the GSPC and its importance. But it has really been the guiding framework for the BGCI. And I wanted to briefly mention BGCI's new 5-year plan, and in your information packs in the delegates' bags, there is a very brief outline of BGCI's 5-year plan. And we'd love to have feedback from you. We'd love to think of ways that we can work together to deliver our ambitious goals. We will, over the next 5 years, BGCI intends to most definitely retain its commitment to the conservation of wild plants and places in terms of restoration, and to increase our efforts in ecological restoration. And we really feel that connecting people with nature is such an important theme that this is the second theme within our 5-year plan. And then the third one is something which we have done work on, but we want to give a greater emphasis to finding natural solutions for sustainable livelihoods and well-being. So we will continue our work of conserving plant diversity, supporting the conservation of plant diversity by identifying the threatened species and the action required, whether that's through red lists for selected groups, through ex situ surveys, through action plans for selected groups, trying to see how we can effectively take forward conservation for threatened species. The Ecological Restoration Alliance builds on that work. and this is something that Joan Wormsley has also already referred to this morning. The Ecological Restoration Alliance of Botanic Gardens was established in 2012 and is facilitated by BGCI. We have a lot of work to do. This is a new initiative with very ambitious aims to restore degraded sites around the world and to share best practice. So really to galvanise the skills and resources of botanic gardens that provide the ability to restore wild places. And the Alliance recognises that involving people in restoration efforts is going to be essential to guarantee success. The Ecological Restoration Alliance is open to any botanic gardens to join. The founding members of the Alliance are represented on this slide, and I'm delighted to say that the Chicago Botanical Garden has signed to an MOU to join the Alliance in the last few days. So it's something that we do see as being of immense importance for the work of botanic gardens. Another new initiative for BGCI has been, again, mentioned by Joan this morning, and Ellie Barham from BGCI will be talking about it later this week. Basically, the idea of an international plant sentinel network to share information and act as an early warning system for the spread of pests and diseases and invasive species that are becoming increasingly a problem with shifts in climatic conditions. So these are new initiatives to support our agenda for plant conservation and environmental education and to support some of the big issues that need our collective attention. Connecting people with nature as one of the central themes for BGCI and its 5-year plan. We really would like to prioritise working with you all on key education resources for botanic gardens and schools. And we have one project that we will be hearing more about this week from Asimina Vergu on the communities in nature, which is bringing more people, diverse audiences, diverse groups into botanic gardens, reaching out to groups who might not traditionally be so associated with a visit to the botanic garden. And I'm sure there's a lot that we can all learn from each other in this respect. So educational outreach remains such an important component of all our work. And finding natural solutions will be challenging. There are around 50,000 medicinal and aromatic plants. Approximately 15,000 are threatened with extinction. There are around 30,000 edible wild plants. We have no idea how many of those are threatened, how many crop wild relatives are under threat. Wild harvested plants have a significant economic value, and we really can, I think, do more to promote cultivation or sustainable harvesting of useful wild plant species. So in our renewed agenda for botanic gardens, there's a huge amount of work that we still have to do. But are we succeeding in our addressing our global challenges of plant conservation? Well, I think in some ways we are making really clearly significant progress. I think even getting countries worldwide to sign up to the GSPC strategy and its targets was a huge effort led by the botanic garden community, and that is now embedded in international and national policy worldwide. Ex situ conservation, I think we are succeeding in making major gains. We will be talking about some of the problems today of exceptional species, those species that are hard to store in seed banks. And we will having a discussion about that later in the week as well. We need to do more. Seed banking, there have been great steps forward, but we need to get more botanic gardens involved in seed banking. And we are making progress in the science of plant conservation, but again, there are still major challenges. Networking, we are very good at networking, and I think it's one of the most enjoyable parts of working for BGCI. Where I think we need to, where we're not succeeding so well is in getting a coordinated information on threatened species. We still don't really have a sense of the scale of the problem, and we can't communicate that effectively to people why we need to be doing more to save all the world's threatened species. We don't have figures that we can reliably say this is the scale of the problem. And I do think we need to have stronger communication messages and share communication messages so that we can convince more people about why our work is fundamentally important. And of course, we need to sell our work. We need to, not quite in that literal sense, but we need to secure more resources, and that is difficult, and botanic gardens do face major challenges in the global recession, but we carry on doing the very best work that we can. So just to refer briefly to the talking points for the Congress, which we'd like you all to comment on some of these issues that are in your information packages. How do we define a botanic garden in the 21st century? It sounds fairly basic, but do we really need to think a little bit about what is a botanic garden with all its complex aspects? How we really push forward on achieving the global plant conservation targets set by the GSPC? Should we really be trying to tackle broader global environmental issues? Can we really respond to the major environmental problems that the world faces today? We have this fantastic resource of plant collection data. How can we share it and use that data more effectively? How can we ensure participation for all in the botanic gardens of the world? And how can we really effectively communicate the science of what we're doing and the importance of what we're doing? So these are some of the key points that we really would like your views on. I think it will make for some interesting discussions, both in the formal sessions and also in the coffee breaks and the evening entertainment sessions. And I just really want to finish with two quotes, 2 points that are probably quite familiar to you all. The conservation of the plant world is ultimately a matter of survival for the human race. And Professor Peter Raven said that at one of the first international botanic garden conservation conferences back in 1975. Clearly, what we're trying to do in conserving plant diversity is fundamentally important. And then Sir Gillian Prance at a conference at Kew in 2009 said we need to go out and convince the world and spread the word to a wider audience. We all know we're doing a great job, but probably a lot of people outside the botanic garden community don't quite understand the impact and the importance of what we do. So thank you very, very much for your attention. There are a lot of challenges, but I think we can enjoy working together to solve some of at least of the world's ecological problems. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sarah, for reminding us that although we know what we know, we don't always know what we don't know. And for every plant that disappears, we will never know the potential of that plant for the well-being of mankind. Sarah, your mention of the International Plant Sentinel Network actually reminded me that in the UK recently, we had a terrible scandal. Somebody went on national radio and told the public that there was a great danger to our gin and tonics because the indigenous species of juniper bushes were all going to be killed by a new disease. But fortunately, I was able to go on the radio the following day and remind people about the role of our botanic gardens and our seed banks in making sure that that didn't happen. So all the gin drinkers of the UK were really very happy about that.